Party people, what is up? Tashi here with very different nails from the rest of this video. I realized after I sat down to edit the process that I did not, in fact, record an intro. So I went back after the fact to record an intro. But today we are working on day 11. And for day 11, I'm telling the story of date night. Joshua and I went and had hot pot, which is like one of our favorite things to do. If you don't know what hot pot is, they give you like a soup base and you just order a bunch of meat and vegetables and cook it in the soup base at the table. But yeah, we're doing this thing, and this is a slide out mechanism inspired by, her Instagram name is Deneen. I can't remember what her first name is, but I will obviously link her video in the description box because this is heavily inspired by her project. But I'm like pushing down on it, so it doesn't work if you push down on it. There we go. We did some sliders in here. There's some ink blending, some die cutting, some heat embossing. There's a lot going on, but I had a lot of fun putting this page together. So if you're interested in seeing how this came together, then please keep watching. All right, party people, so we are going to get to work. I will tell you that this process video was ruthlessly edited. I started out with 2 hours of raw footage and have condensed it down to 18 minutes, which hopefully is long enough for me to properly explain what I did, but not so long that I lose you. So I started with ink blending, and I'm ink blending on Kraft cardstock. This is something I learned from my dear friend Tim Holtz, which is that blending on Kraft cardstock kind of mutes the colors. So they're not as vibrant and as punchy as they would be on white cardstock. And I kind of like that. They look kind of aged and kind of worn, which I really appreciate. So I'm blending on Distress Heavy Kraft stock. And for my reds, I'm using Aged Mahogany and Festive Berries. And I'm blending with my Altenew mini blending brushes. These are my favorite blending tools. They're very ergonomic. I like the way they feel in my hands. I feel like they do a really good job putting down even saturations of color. And then I'm doing the same thing with my greens. For green, I'm using Bundled Sage and Rustic Wilderness. And you guys, I love ink blending. I find it super meditative, super methodical, and it's just a really easy way to like change the color of something and to add some pizzazz to a background. I prefer blending with the Distress Oxides, but any dye ink or even pigment inks will work. The Distress Oxides are just my favorite inks to blend with. I think they have a really diverse color palette. I currently have every color. And I'm really used to using them, so I find them a lot of fun to work with. So this is Speckled Egg, and then I blend that into Stormy Sky. Speckled Egg and Rustic Wilderness are from the new distress colors that Tim has been releasing, which have all been amazing. I haven't made anything with Villainous Potion yet, and I kind of have to because I've been jazzed for a purple ink, and we finally got one. Okay, back to the process. Sorry. So Josh was laughing at me because we chatted a lot about how we needed a new purple, and there is a rabbit hole that we will go down some other day. But I am heat embossing, and I haven't embossed this much in like literally my entire life, as much as I've embossed this December. But I'm heat embossing, and I'm using these Bold Tiding stamp set. They're a smaller version of the one that Tim released last year, which had like 3-inch sentiments. These are anywhere from like 1 to 2 inches. And so I'm stamping them on Distress white cardstock. So this is the white version of the Kraft Heavystock. These are both 110 pounds. And I really wanted something sturdy because this is going to be outside of the page protector and might take some wear and tear. So I'm stamping it with VersaMark clear ink like I did all my heat embossing this December so far. Stamping it with VersaMark clear ink, and this time I'm hitting it with black embossing powder. This is Ranger black embossing powder, but any black powder will work. You guys, once I figured out that using a powder tool is the secret to good embossing, I have been unstoppable. Also, good embossing ink is the other secret to good embossing. I have been really successful with the VersaMark ink. I've tried a few others. I was less successful. Someone recommended this to me, and that and the powder tool has been a game changer. Also, getting a good heat tool will also make things so much easier. I've been using a Wagner heat tool, and I think it's like an industrial tool, honestly. I don't think it's designed for crafters, but crafters like we do have managed to co-opt it like we do with a lot of things that are not designed for paper crafting, and it's amazing. It comes with 2 heat settings, and it sets embossing powder wicked fast. Okay, now I'm hitting this with my Deckle edge trimmer. I think we should call this video how many Tim Holtz products I can use in one video, because now that I'm rewatching it, I'm like, there's a lot of them. It just tells you that I'm a really big fan of him and the stuff he designs. But the Deckle edge trimmer is a lever trimmer just like the other ones, but it doesn't cut a straight edge. It cuts like a if you know anything about Tashi, you know Tashi's a real big fan of ripped edges. The Deckle edge trimmer gives me the ripped edge, but it does it for me so I get a straight line versus me trying to do it and then not getting a straight line. All right. So now let's get to the math of this whole thing. And I left this entire process in, which is me trying to figure out where my lines go. If you've watched Danine's video, which again I will link in the description box, you'll see how she explains it. But I wanted to put these 3 squares on an 8 1/4 by 11 inch paper. And this is a pattern paper from the add-on pattern paper kit. In the kit, it is red. I opened it in Photoshop, turned down the opacity so that the images weren't as bright, and then made it gray. Because I wanted a more neutral background. So the first line you saw me draw was I drew a line 1/4 of an inch from the edge that was going to have a hole punched in it, because I wanted to make sure that I left room for me to punch my hole. Then what I did was I used my T-square and I made marks 3 1/4 inch apart, and then so I did one mark that was 3 1/4 inches, and then another mark that was 1/8 of an inch from that, and then another mark that was 3 1/4, and then another mark that was 1/8, and then another mark that's 3 1/4. And what that does is it gives me my 3 squares for where I'm going to put my tracks. And then the next thing I'm doing is I'm measuring how long the tracks have to be, because the pictures themselves are 2 3/4 by 3, so they're rectangles, they're not squares, and I'm trying to figure out how long the tracks have to be. So that's what I'm doing. First I marked the midpoint of the page, and then I'm marking where the the ink blended squares will sit, and then from where the ink blended squares will sit, where my photos are going to be, and then from there, how long do I need to make the track. So this line I'm drawing right now, so you see I have the 3 squares, that's where the 3 ink blended panels are going to be. And then I'm marking the bottom line, which is how far down I want my photos to slide out. I want my photos to slide out so they're completely visible, but I do want them to not slide out so far that they fall off the page. So once I get that grid line, so literally all I'm doing is creating a grid. I probably could have done this in Photoshop. I was telling Joshua after I did this, you guys, literally took me 2 hours. I was telling Joshua after I did this that the smart thing to do would be to do it in Silhouette Studio and let that do all the math for me, but I really wanted to do it by hand. Now I'm marking the midline of each of those squares, because the midline is going to be where I cut my tracks. And I eventually go ahead and cut my tracks with my X-Acto knife, which I highly regret. I do not like using X-Acto knives. I'm not very good at them. I've practiced 100 times. There's no hope for me. But I pulled out my my self-healing mat and a ruler, and I'm cutting a little rectangle down that middle line. Now what I did was cut a little bit before the line, and then I cut a little bit after the line, and this created 3 really shallow rectangles. And we're not zooming in, because if we did, you would see how terrible my cuts are, and I do not want you to see how terrible my cuts are. And hindsight, I probably should have let a machine do this, because the machine would have done a much better job. But what I'm doing now is putting my squares right on top of the grid, and obviously the grid's on the back, so I'm kind of eyeballing it. But this helps me decide exactly where the squares are going to go, and then helps me figure out where my photos are going to go. So it's worthwhile to do the math to figure out where things go. So now what I'm doing, and from here, I did exactly what Danine did in her process video. You guys watch her video. She does a much better job of explaining this than I'm ever going to, and hers is in real time versus mine being sped up. So I have a self-healing mat, and I'm using a pokey tool. This is a Kraft pick from Tim Holtz. It's a graphic from Tim Holtz that's designed for poking the bits out of die cuts that you cut with a die cutting machine, but it also works as an awl, and I don't have an awl. So I'm putting a photo down, putting 2 stars down at the top and the bottom edge, and poking a hole through it, and also poking a hole through the backing paper that's going to cover my track. And then from there, I take some star brads, I go right to my mat, and I start anchoring it down. So what you do is you put the brad through the embellishment, and then you put the brad through the photo, which it would help if this was in frame, and then you flip it over, and on the back side, I'm telling you, Danine does a much better job of explaining this. I'm trying to explain this, and I think I'm making a mess. But you put the star brad through the embellishment, and then through your photo, and then on the back side, you put it through the scrap of cardstock. And my scraps of cardstock are the length of my photo, so they're 3 inches long, and they're 1 inch wide, so that there's enough space on either side for the star brad. And if you see that little bit of washi tape on the left, it's because I really messed up my cutting and I cut the paper too much, and I used some washi tape to fix what I did, because I wasn't going to start all the way over and do it again, because in the edited video, the unedited version, you will see that this is actually the third piece of paper that I printed out, because I've ruined it that many times, which is why I was like, I should probably have let a cutting machine do this. So there you go. Now you see that it should slide up and down along that cut line, and then the piece of paper that you're putting on the back side just prevents the star brad from going all the way through and causing a ruckus. And so through the magic of editing, you don't have to watch me do that 3 times. I have all 3 of my photos down, and from here I'm working on building the page. So I'm putting my 3 ink blended panels over the photos, and again, the ink blended panels are a 1/2 inch wider than the photos themselves, because I need the ink blended panels to go on top of the photos, and if they were the same width, then that wouldn't work. And this is, now we're pulling out the foam tape, and I will say, this is the first time I've used any sort of foam in this entire album, and it might mean that I might get all 25 days in one album. The other thing is there's so much real estate that I don't need to do as many flips and all the other things that add bulk. And so there is a very large chance that I might get all 25 days into one album. And if I don't, I'm going to be really sad, because I might get like 20 days and then the last 5 days won't fit. And we'll see what I do at that point. But I had to use 2 layers of foam tape. These are 1/8 inch strips of foam from Darice. I think I'm saying that right. But they're 1/8 of an inch wide. They're really long, skinny strips. They're perfect for something like this. And I ended up having to stack 2 strips because one strip was not lifted off the star brad enough. The thing about using a star brad for this is that's going to add dimension. So to put something on top of it, you need something that's taller than the star brad so that that can slide out evenly. You will also watch me check that this slides 100 times in this process, because I kept double checking my work to make sure that it worked. The last thing I wanted was to finish this entire page and then my sliding mechanism doesn't work. But same thing, I put 2 strips of foam tape stacked on top of each other. It's adhesive on both sides, so I just put one down, ripped off the release paper, put another one down on top, and then put it on my background. And then I use wet glue to adhere. See, there we go. There's me checking again that it works. And then I use wet glue to adhere the white squares to the ink blended panels. And that looks pretty good, just looking at it again. I'm really happy with how it works. It was a lot of finagling to make it happen, but I think it was worth it. So now I'm working on my full page photo, and originally my plan was to put the journaling under one of those squares, and I can't be concise to save my life, and I couldn't fit my journaling on a 3x3 square. I kept trying. I wrote the journaling and then I edited it, and then I was like, well, do I want to edit it? And then I was like, I'll just do a flip out. So I printed my journaling 3 inches wide by 8 1/4, which is the length of the photo outside of the page protector. And then I'm just assembling it using a flip up. I used a 8 1/4 inch long by 2 inch wide piece, and I just stuck that down to the back side of my journaling, folded it on itself, and then I stuck it down to the rest of my photo. So I cut my photo at 3 inches so it covers just the journaling, and then pretty much I'm just reassembling it. I used tape runner to reassemble it and put it back together, and that is pretty much how I attach my story into the album. This is a really basic flip up. It's one of my favorite ways to include longer stories, or ways to include larger photos. I've been really fortunate this album in that I haven't had to include a lot of them because of the real estate, and flip ups like this is what adds a lot of bulk because you're folding pages on top of each other. If I could just put my entire album in page protectors, I would fit it in one album, but that's for the birds. I'm not doing that. So here we go. That's how it looks. I'm just making sure that it folds in on itself, and then I'm adding embellishments. We are super close to being done with this process. This, again, 2 long hours. I put on my headphones. I had to edit all the bits out so you don't see my head with my big blue headphones. I had my headphones on and I just went to work, and it was a lot of fun to play. Not every page in my album needs to be this extravagant and this ornate, but every now and then it's pretty fun to try something new. So I pulled out some dies. These are some dies from, you probably guessed it, they're from Tim Holtz and Sizzix, and they're the Holiday Greens, the mini version, and I just dropped them on the floor. I die cut it on 2 different colors of green cardstock using my Gemini Junior, which lives on my desk. I love having an electronic die cutting machine. It's been a game. Again, I'm die cutting and embossing more this album than I feel like I've done ever, and I die cut some greens to layer on over my my white tags. It just felt like there was a lot of white space on them, and I was like, what would fill them up that would match? I just put some greens down. I feel like I thought about putting chipboard, I thought about putting stars, but I thought anything else would be too distracting, and there was already a lot going on. Even when the photos are tucked in, there was still already a lot going on. So I decided to just go with some holiday greenery, and then I pulled out some, there we go, there's me checking again that they work. I pulled out some red glitter chipboard stars. These came in the main kit from Ali Edwards this year. If I had to pick something besides the stars that I'm a really big fan of, it is probably those red glitter chipboard hearts. Now, in the meantime, while I'm working, because I don't think anything here really has to be explained, I will read my journaling to you because I don't know when else I'll do it. So I just wrote, Dear Date Night. It's always a joy when you come around, and a joy magnified when it's random and spontaneous and delightfully unexpected. I love the season of life we're in, the season where we don't have to plan every moment of every day, and there is more and more time for Joshua and I to just be in the same space together. And I love that it creates more opportunities for us to run into you, for us to go to the movies or explore my favorite childhood haunts, or try the new hot pot restaurant my coworkers were sure we'd love. Spoiler alert, they were right. Opportunities to drink way too much sangria and laugh way too loud. Opportunities for us to celebrate love, celebrate us without it requiring a formal occasion or marked date on the calendar. I love that all these years later, it still gives me butterflies when he asks me out. And I love that he gets an extra pep in his step when I tell him I'm taking him somewhere nice and to hurry up and get dressed. Our varied approaches will always make me laugh. So to you, date night, I say hello and welcome, and thanks for making space for extra joy in our relationship, and cheers till we meet again. I imagine it'll be sooner rather than later. And you guys, that was me attempting to be concise. I didn't really succeed, which is why I didn't fit on those 3x3 squares, but we're back to the process. So I've added the gold, not gold, those are not gold. I've added the red glitter chipboard hearts, and then I pulled out some red tiny phrase stickers. These are from last year, 2 years ago. The December daily tiny phrase stickers are probably one of my favorite things because they're a really easy way to add an embellishment. I just thought the photos looked naked, so I went through this and pulled out phrases that I thought made sense and matched with the phrase, and then with the photo, and then I put them in 3 different places. So I really like that one in the center. It said togetherness. I will tell you, we got a lot of strange things at Hot Pot. We had liver, and we had tripe, and then we had like pork belly and beef, which was relatively normal. And then we got a bunch of vegetables. We got mussels. I kept asking the server, I was like, what do you recommend we get? And so she was helping us find really fun and tasty things. From here, I pulled out my number stash. If you attended the prep party last year, you'll see that that's how I organize my numbers. I use 12 by 12 page protectors and organize my small numbers by numbers. So when I'm looking for something, I'm not stuck rifling through my entire stash. Like, it's all organized by numbers. I could open up one pocket and pull out exactly the number that I'm looking for. And I added 2 bits of greenery to that white space in the plate. I took that photo with intention to put something there so that I would have a place to just stand out. And then I'm sticking my number down using a little bit of wet glue. I go ahead and add some more chipboard hearts, and then I add 1 more of those phrase stickers on the 11, and that completes the page. So that's it, you guys. That was a journey. It took a lot of twists and turns to get here, but I'm super happy with how this page came out, and I hope you enjoyed watching the process. I hope it inspired you. I hope you learned something. I hope it gave you a technique to try in your own documenting. So that's all I have for you today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments below, and I will see you for day 12. For day 12, we are doing what we always do, which is documenting my holiday playlist, and I am super looking forward to it. So till next time, keep it crafty and have the very best day, and I'll see you around. Bye for now.